Welcome to Robotics and Automation News webinars, where you can be part of a global event without leaving your home or office. Attend our live webinars and communicate directly with influential professionals in your industry.
Hello, my name is Abdul Muntakim. I'm editor of robotics and automation news.com. In this interview, I speak to Dr. Sudhir Srivastava, who is the founder and chairman of a startup company called SS Innovations. This is a slightly longer interview than I usually do, but I found the story of how Dr. Srivastava invested all his own money into establishing what is India's first and only complete robotic surgery system fascinating. Hope you find it interesting too.
Name is Dr. Sudhir Srivastava, and I am chairman and CEO of the SS Innovations Group companies. And we've got about, I think, 5 total group companies. And so currently we are in India, and SS Innovations is actually Sudhir Srivastava Innovations Private Limited. It's an Indian company, and we are operating out of Gurgaon in India. It's the part of the National Capital Region city. And I'm from the background, I'm a heart surgeon, and with further specialization and experience in robotic cardiac surgery, and lived in US for a very long time, and developed, in fact, and pioneered a lot of cases in relation to the robotic cardiac surgery, and particularly coronary bypass surgery. And so after leaving United States back in 2011, I got involved with launching programs in India. And previously I had trained almost 350 various surgical teams from around the world, and had performed over 1,400 robotic cardiac surgical cases, which at one time was the largest experience, and very passionate about developing these techniques because it's hugely beneficial to the patient in terms of less traumatic and very fast recovery. And after coming to India, I realized that the system is very expensive. There's one company called Da Vinci or Intuitive Surgical, and it was literally unaffordable. So got involved with the development of a new surgical robotic system with the idea that it should be different, although the Da Vinci system is a great machine. But because of the expense and also its history of over 20 years without actually making major changes in the core technologies, I felt that there is an opportunity to improve upon this as well as make it cost effective so more and more patients around the world can benefit from it. And so my personal role with the experience in the robotic cardiac surgery was to literally put a team together and lead them into the development of different types of surgical robotic. And I spent a lot of my personal funds initially, and then looked for funding. We got funding from the international investors and developed the system literally within 3 years. And in relation to the specific roles that I play, therefore I was just going to tell you that don't ask me about what all I do. You don't want to know the long list, but I'll just kind of summarize that constantly working literally from morning till night with the team of engineers, looking at what they're doing, guiding them in the development, testing when it is done, and doing the animal trials and cadaver trials, and literally planning in terms of the strategies, in terms of the market launch, in terms of the regulatory approval, with a team of people. So we currently have roughly around 70 people. Majority of them are technical people, and mostly are in India. And so for practical purposes, the entire thing has been developed by team in India, and also the entire manufacturing and assembly is taking place here. And that's kind of in a nutshell to your answer. And I know it's probably more than what you wanted, but Otherwise, it will not give you complete background as to what's going on here.
No, it's a good answer, and I tend to ask more anyway. So I'm pleased that you've given an extensive answer. I would just add to that. Obviously, given the information about you, your background, I'll just recap that a bit. You were a cardiothoracic surgery. You had a residency. I suppose you taught cardiothoracic surgery at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada, and you also worked in the Alliance Hospital Center of Excellence in Cardiovascular Disease in West Texas in the US. So that's just a couple of extra addition. I don't know if you mentioned those, but those are the two things that I've got in your background.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Yeah, you were at the
can talk a little
University of
bit.
Chicago as well.
Yes.
So you're a heart surgeon who's got experience in North America and came to India, came back to to I suppose your home country, if you don't mind me saying, and developed something which is quite pioneering and unique in India, I suppose, isn't it?
Say that again.
In India, it's a unique system. I mean, there's not many of these robotic surgery systems in the world anyway, and Da Vinci I've heard of as well. They're extremely expensive as far as I'm aware and told.
That's correct, right? Yeah.
I'll just
in India, no one else is.
Sorry, I'll just go to. I'll share my screen, and I'll just go to the website. Which I opened earlier, and we can carry on talking. So this is the website of SS Innovations, and
that's correct.
Yeah, and it's a very nice website. It's very professionally done, and obviously the pictures showing the hardware, the system, shows that it's similar to what I've seen in other places. You've mentioned that you've done robotic heart surgery or robotic surgery before. Is this similar to the implements or machines that you've used before? You used the Da Vinci, for example, before.
Yes. So I did all my cardiac surgery cases with the Da Vinci system, mostly when I was in the United States, and then of course in India and many other countries that I have operated. And so yes, it was exclusively the Da Vinci system, and our system is, the principles of surgical robotics is same across the board. It's almost like doesn't matter which company. And so it's a teleoperation. That means surgeon is sitting away from the patient. And as you can see on the website, there is a surgeon sitting on the surgeon console. And then the robotic arms are attached to the patient through some small incisions and pores. And then there's a vision cart there where the tableside team actually sees what's going on inside the body. And so surgeon sitting away from the patient is controlling the robotic arms and the instruments, looking at a 3D monitor. So this is basically is what we call a teleoperation of the robotic system. And so it is quite different at every level than Da Vinci system, other than the main principle. So our surgeon command center is open-faced, as you can see. With the Da Vinci, since you have seen pictures, looks like the surgeon is sitting hunched over, and the viewing, the screen is only around 8 inches. And then once you put your head in there, you don't see your hands or feet. So in our case, we wanted to have an open face, so it's more ergonomic. The surgeon can actually sit straight. There's a very large monitor, a 26-inch monitor. So as principles of surgery, higher the magnification, bigger is the view, and more precise tasks can be performed by the surgeon. Then also we have a large 2D monitor, which is a touch panel, and one can pull all kinds of images in relation to the patient, any like CT scan or MRI or angiogram or echo, we can pull up. Also, our software is quite sophisticated. So we have a thing called Actin Viewer, whereby we can literally have the image of our entire system right on the screen in front of the surgeon. So again, it is very different than the Da Vinci. Da Vinci does not have it. They have small little tile pros about 1.5 inch or so maximum at the bottom of their screen when you're looking inside. And it has all kinds of advantages in our console. And the rest are pretty standard. We have active hand controls. But of course, the mounting is different because of open face. So ergonomically, it is superior, better visual features, and better control functions from the 2D screen and capabilities of bringing image. One of our future plan is to be able to literally transpose either CT or MRI images into the operative field and giving surgeon another precise, in terms of where the tumor is located so that they can either, save rest of the tissues or make sure that the tumor is out. Going on to our vision cart, you see a large 32-inch monitor. So Da Vinci has only a 2D monitor. In my opinion, as a surgeon, I feel that the 3D is very, very important for avoiding any accidents. It is safer. Also, it makes it more efficient because you know exactly where these instruments have to go or supplies have to go without causing any accidents or inadvertent injury to some tissue that you don't want to touch. So the tableside team has the same view as the surgeon, and uh, which really takes the hesitation away. So the learning curve is shortened. And also, if you have training surgeons or people, they watch the same 3D view as the surgeon. Our arms are different and they are modular. As you can see, these cards are separate. Da Vinci system has got all the arms attached to one central beam. And because of that, at times there are challenges in terms of setting the system up for surgery. And of course, people in the end figure out. But the modular design allows us to place these cards wherever required and without causing any conflicts within the arm. Uh, Also, we have what we call a collision detection. So at every level, our system is different. We also have this Omni 3D platform that you see, and it has recording and playback capabilities. And we can literally use this for tele-mentoring people. So one of our future plan is as we launch the programs, we can proctor them long distance using either 5G or high-speed connections. And this way, we don't have to be flying surgeons, and the whole process is inefficient and expensive and unpredictable. So this really will be helpful. And one of our plans is to develop telesurgery utilizing some of our features here.
Yeah, it's a obviously very sophisticated, complex system just from looking at it, looking at the pictures. So it must have been a huge challenge building it from nothing. So I'm quite interested in how you went about it. You said that you spent your own money initially and then got investors. But the technical challenge is, where did you go? Who did you ask to build the hardware? Who did you ask to? I don't mean specifically who, but tell us about the process that you experienced in the building and development of the hardware and the software to integrate all of this. And how long did it take you? It looks like a multi-year endeavor.
Yes. So just to give you a very quick background, back in, I think, 2009 timeframe, I used to talk to Da Vinci people and talk to them about making the system modular if possible and cheaper. and they were enjoying monopoly, so there was no interest in changing anything. And then, of course, they will have to go through the entire FDA approval process all over, and so they were not really interested at all. And so, at the invitation of some people in India, a Fortis hospital chain, and they invited me. The idea at that time was to launch 10 programs. And I was very passionate about coming to India to bring the technology and these techniques to our country. And I used to come and operate free in India over the years and trained a lot of teams from India. And and in fact, I was the first one ever to do robotic surgery in India back in 2002. And so in 2011, upon this invitation, I came, and what I realized, having left the United States, that it was very expensive and patients just could not afford. And at that time, there were only, I think, if I'm not mistaken, around, I think, 15 or 20 systems or so, very small number. And people were not even aware of it, and the cost was prohibitive. So, people just couldn't afford. And one of my biggest challenge, although we even many times offered the surgery free, but the hospital will charge. And unfortunately, then I couldn't operate on these patients. That really pained me, that why patients cannot have surgery just because they don't have money. While in US, it never was a problem because the insurance is covered. In India, of course, the system is so different. There's only 10% insurance, and they don't even cover robotics. So I made it my mission, I think it was around 2012, to really develop a system that will be very different, and if we can make it cheaper. And so initially, I went to Germany when you were asking as to how did I learn. And so I worked with some of the German scientists. We had a company in New York through which we were developing this thing in Germany with some of the space agency scientists. And it was very expensive. So I spent almost $4.5 billion of my personal funds chasing this dream. And unfortunately, the German, they could not do it actually with all their talents. And because surgical robotic is very different than industrial robotic. And other than Da Vinci at that time, there was no one else at all. And so when I was back in India, so I put a team together of about 10 engineers. They worked out of my house in the dining room, and I ran out of money. I wasn't practicing anymore because I just wanted to really do this thing. Borrowed money from friends, sold my car, sold my furniture, and looked for money. And it was very difficult. It's like people, unfortunately, in India, they don't invest in the medical technologies because of the long, gestation period, regulatory risk, and competition and unknown markets. So it was difficult, and fortunately, then finally I got funding, and then we just continued the development. And I must say it was a very humbling experience. And in fact, we finished the development literally in 3 years' time. If you look at the comparison of J&J, which is the largest medical device company in the world, and also Medtronic, they were at it for 8 years in budgets of 350 million. And I started with the meager money of $5 million from the investors. And we gradually raised over a period of time, roughly around, I think, 35 or $40 million. And so the entire development occurred within this budget and within a relatively short time. And I think what I contribute this to, first of all, our wonderful team of young talent, and none of them had robotic experience whatsoever. And it was kind of literally a homegrown team learning on the job. And what really helped was my clinical experience and my literally working day and night with them. So we didn't have to call somebody to test the system and so on. And so that was really, I would say, a credit to the team, and also my close association that helped this the speed of development. And then we did 3 animal trials and we did cadaver trial. And then in December of last year and extending into January of this year, we did first in human clinical trial, which I must say was a great milestone for us to be able to establish that our system was safe. We could do the procedures effectively in humans, and very complex operations were done at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute by Dr. Rawal. And Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute is the premier institute for cancer surgery, and particularly they have the highest volume of robotic cases. And Dr. Rawal is the busiest robotic surgeon. So he is literally an expert on the Da Vinci system, and he had done over 3,000 some procedures. And he was very comfortable with our system. So he did 18 complex procedures very successfully. And the patients did fine. There was no system related issue. They all went home without any complications, either device related or with the surgical procedures. So it was a great milestone. And I think that's kind of a little history about how we did and what we did. And now we are on to, based on what we learned in the clinical trials, certain modifications that we are making in the system. And we hope to complete that in the next 2 months or so. And our goal will be to do another animal and a human trial, a short number of cases, and then go to the market starting in India later this year. And just to give you a financial comparison, Da Vinci sells anywhere between $2 to $2.5 million, the top model. And our system will be able to do similar every single thing. And not only that, we will have a focus on heart surgery. So even though Da Vinci originally was developed for coronary bypass surgery in a totally endoscopic way, basically they have given up on it completely. And they don't even make instruments to do coronary bypass surgery anymore. And there's a huge vacuum. There are millions of patients globally that still undergo splitting of the sternum for heart surgery. In my case, I haven't opened the chest in 9 years now. And so we had developed all these techniques that we can do very complex heart operations, valve surgeries, congenital tumors, and coronary bypass surgery through tiny incisions. And when I was in US in Alliance Hospital, I was the founding president and chairman also, ran the hospital for 4 years. So we had the program very well organized. And 20% of my patients after bypass surgery went home next day. 50% or more went home within 2 days or less. Average length of stay was like 3.2 days. And these patients were back to their functional status within a week to 10 days. So I feel that, of course, our system will do all specialties like urology, gynecology, general surgery, thoracic, head and neck. But also with my experience, and also we have a wonderful advisory board on the cardiac side, boards who's who, and they're, I think, posted on our website as well. So we want to really undertake this field because having the sternum open is great for the surgeon, but not for the patients. Long recovery, complications, blood loss, and so on. And so we also have developed certain automated, what we call an anastomotic connector, which will join the artery literally in 6 seconds with a push-up button. And this will literally revolutionize the coronary bypass surgery globally, and whereby people don't have to sew with hands. The procedures will become faster. The results are predictable because the human skill level is taken out of the equation. And every time you do, as long as you can put it properly, you will have a reproducible anastomosis and results. So we are really focusing also on cardiac. And so no other company is touching. So this will be a tremendous distinctive feature for SSI, that we will be offering this for cardiac. And the other thing also, which is very different and beneficial to the communities and doctors, that being a modular design, we can use anywhere between 3 to 5 arms based on the types of procedures that the surgeons do, their experience, hospital budgets, and complexities. And so a lot of procedures, in fact, can be done with three arms: gallbladder, hysterectomy, some of the esophageal operations, head and neck operation. They can all be done with three arms. So there's no reason to pay for a four-arm system when you don't really need it. So this will make it cheaper and better. And just like for cardiac, I will be using five arms. So again, no other company has this ability, and also keeping it cost effective. So just to, as mentioned, the Da Vinci costs somewhere around $2 to $2.5 million, and our end user price will be somewhere between around 550 to 650,000 US dollar equivalent. And everything else will be one third the price of the Da Vinci components, either instruments or maintenance contracts or accessories. So the whole goal was to really make it cheap so that it changes the direction of surgery. And with the Da Vinci system, even though they have enjoyed monopoly, and there is no other company, there is one other company that has surfaced now from UK, the Cambridge Medical Robotic System, and we feel that the gap that is left with the Da Vinci system, if you take United States, Europe, and Japan, that is 93% of the penetration of all the Da Vinci systems. And that means for over 6 billion population, there's only 7% penetration. If you take India with 1.3 or 1.4 billion population, we have only around 75 or so systems, which is nothing compared to the need that is in the country of having 40,000 or so hospitals. And that means only very small fraction of hospitals have it. And that means a very small number of surgeons, and then the patients don't have access. So the vision really is truly humanitarian, at the same time utilizing the best possible technology to look at the future, because robotics will be the future of surgery. There is no reason in today's stage to have large incisions for operations. Patients recover much longer time. They don't get back to their functional status. Families have to rearrange. And there's a huge burden on the socio-economic and healthcare structure. So things that we are planning to do will literally address every one of those. And also our training model will be different, so that not only we will have the routine training model, but the whole tele mentoring. Our plan is to create Omni studios regionally, whereby expert surgeons can go and guide and sit there with the images coming from different hospitals. We can guide the surgeons sitting there. And at the same time, we are developing telesurgery. That means we can operate wherever. And India now is, we have fiber optic network with very high speed connectivity, and 5G is in the works right now. So one of the goal is to truly decentralize excellence, because right now, and this applies actually not only just in India, but in every country, including some of the most developed countries, because a lot of these centers are in larger cities. People still have to travel. So if we can introduce these cost effectively and also be able to do long distance surgeries, it will really change the accessibility in rural areas or small towns or in remote areas where militaries are posted. So there are huge benefits, and also we are looking at the future in terms of a lot of new applications, literally specialty specific robots like pediatrics or head and neck. And so we're looking at numerous opportunities in future using the robotic technology. Also with our modular arms, we'll have single arm applications whereby we can literally do ultrasound, for example, remotely completely, long distance controlled. So people don't have to come to the large centers to have ultrasound done or wait. Biopsies, diagnostic biopsies can be done again remotely with 3D imaging. So we have got a huge plan in terms of utilizing the technology to make it easier on patients, improve the quality by early diagnosis and treatments, and to be able to offer surgery wherever it's needed. And this is kind of the vision for future.
Okay. All right. Well, you've answered a lot of the questions I would have asked. So I really appreciate that.
And I'm sorry I get
No,
going
no,
once.
no, no. You were answering questions that I had in my mind, so I would have asked those questions anyway. So it's fine. I'll give you examples. You mentioned about the Da Vinci system being about 2.5 million, and I wondered how much yours costs, but you came round to telling us that, which is about about 500,000. Obviously, it depends on the configuration and everything, but an equivalent system would be
Sure.
a fraction of the cost, basically, about a
Right.
fifth, quarter or a fifth of the cost. So that's important to know. The other question I was going to ask, which you answered, is what is it about robotic surgery which you feel can improve on human surgeon? And you talked about some of the medical conditions where a robot can do something that perhaps a surgeon won't be able to do as easily or within a certain time frame, and so on, which appreciate. And the idea of the business aspect of it as well, the idea of it's spreading into the market and competing with Da Vinci and Cambridge Surgical, both of which we have featured on our website. So we'd be very happy to update readers on your company as well, as and when you have developments and press releases that we can publish and support. Obviously,
Yes.
it's a very important field, medical medicine, especially now, is uppermost in a lot of people's minds. And I suppose the only question left, or something that I want to learn for myself, and I don't know, this is not strictly your area of expertise, but you did talk about telesurgery, and that really, in my mind, depends, or it's critical to have the networking. And you did touch on it. You said fiber optics exists and things like that. 5G is in the works. If you could explain to me how a surgeon in, say, for example, Delhi, would operate on a patient in Mumbai or anywhere in the world. But let's take
Yes.
Mumbai. You've got fiber optics connecting the two cities. Is it fast enough? I mean, the problem with network, even now, even with fiber optics, milliseconds matter. And how do you verify that the movement that you have instructed the robot to make, perhaps the incision or the sewing or something, how do you verify that that has actually happened? Is it through the screen, you can see the implement moving, or is it read out some data saying maneuver completed or something? You see, my concern is that any tiny little latency, as they call it, a little lag between you're pressing the button at your end and the machine following your instruction, can be quite dangerous in this situation. So tell us about the networking and tele operation. I know it's not something that you're already commercializing or you're just now developing, but tell us about some of the challenges and things. But I have heard other people doing it, telesurgery across borders, different countries. Some surgeons in Europe operating on patients in Africa and so on. And yeah, it has been done. But tell us about the issues in that area, technical issues, if you
Sure.
can.
It's a great question, and looks like you've done a fair amount of reading on it. You're quite informed, and you're using technical terms like latency that are not very familiar with a lot of people. So let me tell you, first of all, the first transatlantic telesurgery was done by a company called Computer Motion, which was prior to actually the Da Vinci system. And Da Vinci acquired and they shut them down. They had some dispute and so on. But they used a platform called Socrates from New York, and they operated in Strasbourg in France, and they did a gallbladder back in 1998. So the proof of concept was established, and they blocked 3 satellites for communication. It took almost an hour and a half to do the operation. Of course, there was significant latency because of the signals the way they went, and back in '98 these speeds were just not there. But they were able to complete the surgery. The cost was $1.5 million, mainly because of the satellites. So since then, I think things have come long ways in terms of the high speed. And in fact, if you recall also, the entire development of the surgical robotic was initially, at least in the United States, was funded by NASA and Defense Department with the idea to be able to operate in space and also in battlefields, and to be able to do long distance. But the bandwidth was not there and the technology was not evolved. And so essentially they shelved it. So this is how actually this whole robotic field developed, with the idea of telesurgery. Now, over the last 2 decades or so, and we have seen the growth and the development and the speed in relation to the internets. And so now you can almost get 100 gigs per second speed, which is huge. If you think about, when you talk of the latency, so fiber optic network and 5G, they give you almost close to real time. Now, nothing can ever be done without latency. That is just how it is. Then the question comes in terms of the latency, is it an acceptable latency? So the human brain can tolerate up to somewhere around 250, even at times up to maximum of 300 millisecond latency. And beyond that, it goes nuts. It cannot comprehend. And the whole processing, because we are used to seeing instantaneously and process instantaneously. But so based on the current high-speed connectivity, that is absolutely achievable today. 5 years ago, I would say it would not be. People have done experiments in past in Japan, and with latency, three-way latency was around 400 milliseconds. Now, when you talk about the concerns, whether is it correct what you did and on, so let me just kind of take a minute to explain that one. So first of all, if let's say I am going to be operating and I'm sitting in Delhi with a surgeon command center, and so on the other side, there will be a full, let's say mantra system in Bombay, and there will be a surgical team, and they will have the arms, they will have the whole system will be there, including another surgeon console. The team actually must be trained to be able to do robotic surgery, because if something happens or connections break, then it must be completed. So firstly, you need another trained team at the other end. Secondly, the way it works is that I will operate, and we were in fact in dialogue with Airtel, which is a telecom company in India, and we have already in fact figured out technologically what all will be needed and created block diagrams in terms of how the signals will be taken out from our computer into the lines, and how they will be decoded at the other end, and will run the system there. So the way it works is that the team on the other side in Bombay, they will make the incisions and place the robotic arms and attach. And once everything is done and organized, of course, there will be a tableside team also. And they also have the same tableside view as I do. So they are also watching the surgery on, let's say, our vision cart and our Omni platform, okay? So they are seeing every single thing, and these are also trained people. And I'm seeing the same thing with a certain latency. And if there is any concern, because if a bleeding occurs, for instance, uh, 200 milliseconds is not a problem at all. These things occur even today, and every system probably has somewhere, and everybody reports differently, and nobody actually has done completely controlled studies. But I would say even now, locally, even in the operating room, because of the system latency in relation to hand signals to the computer processing, to the processing that occurs in the arms, and then you have video latency because the camera is really what we watch, because we are not watching the instrument tips directly, so we are basically looking at an image. So essentially that also has a built-in latency. The monitor itself has a latency. So when you combine all of these things, on average you will find that it's somewhere between 100 to 150 milliseconds, depending on all of these other different areas that contribute to the latency. So if you have a camera system that increases the latency, then you will have a higher latency, and so on. Or if you have a very a slow processor in your computer system, again that will add to the latency. But these are, I would say right now, based on at least the system that are available, including ours, and we have measured these things. So they somewhere hang out in this range. And so with the high speed, it only if you have, let's say, a direct line. And so that's where the question comes, is this, let's say we have go through fiber optic network, and from here it's, let's say it goes to Ahmedabad first before it goes to Bombay. So now you have a relay station, which will add, otherwise it is literally few milliseconds. So these things will add, so there's like 4 to 5 milliseconds to get to the next station. So it will add very little latency because of this. Now, if I was to operate in a different country, then again, so it is tried proportionately to some degree based on the length of the transmission. It's mathematical. And so more relay stations you have, and also the direct connectivity and dedicated lines. So obviously you cannot go through a typical hospital router system. One time we were in Texas, and I was going to Proctor from Atlanta to a surgeon in Texas, Tyler, Texas. And Vishwa, my son, who actually developed Omni system, so he was there with a camera, and I was sitting in my office in Atlanta, and so I was proctoring the surgeon, and the latency was 3 seconds, literally, because it's going through various hospital routers. In my office, I'm going through the hospital network, which is firewalled, and same thing at the other end. And it was very difficult because I'm telling him, do this thing. And finally, Vishwa called me from the other end. Dad, he's already done it. You're not seeing it. And that's real. But good thing is, this was, I think, back in 2011 or so, or 10, 8, 9, 7. And no, Atlanta, I was in 2009, right? Yeah. So it was in that time frame. Since then, we've come long ways. So now, at my home, I have 1 gig speed and do video conferences just like real time. And at 10 gig per second, I mean, it's blazing speed actually. We don't even need that. Based on everything that we have talked to the telecom people, maximum of 1 gig speed, because this all has been calculated actually by our team as to, based on the processing time and every single thing, what will be a total latency, and we can calculate that based on the speeds available. And so what we have found that if we can do 1 gig, we can do very comfortably, but it needs to be consistent, and that means dedicated lines.
Mm. Yeah, it's a very interesting area, and it'd be interesting to hear what of any developments about that. Somebody will do the research that you're talking about, the idea of measuring the latency. But if it's not an issue now, then obviously that's something that it's not a priority to resolve. And also you have the fail-safe or backup system where you have surgeons at the other end who can complete the surgery if there's a breakdown in communication between the machines.
Right.
And also, I was wondering, I mean, it seems to me like this system can be put on the back of a truck and it could be used as a
Absolutely. I
mobile
was just
hospital.
going to say that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
talk about, you must have thought about it then already.
Oh, yes. Yeah, one of our plan when I talk of decentralizing excellence to literally put it in mobile units, and this we can perform surgery with mobile unit. And when we talk of telesurgery, so one of the ways to look at it, at least initially, would be, of course, it will be as an experiment early on, would be in the major centers. So as part of the training, if you just think about someone going through a residency program where you are learning how to operate. So after having gone through the whole thing, now surgeon lets you operate. Now surgeon normally is standing across you and to guide you. And our telementoring will do that. And if I get into trouble in operating room, my attending surgeon is there, he can take over and finish the operation because of his experience. So our telesurgery will provide that, total life cycle type of approach, whereby if the team for whatever reason got into problem, some expert surgeon can finish. So it's just like having an attending across you. And one other thing that I must mention, that it will actually increase surgeons' surgical life as a surgeon, because you get to sit down. So when you reach certain stage, people develop natural tremors. Okay, they cannot stand for a long time or bend over, and so surgeon can sit comfortably with a tremendously magnified view. The hand controls, then the signals are transmitted, they filter tremors completely. So one of the beauty of this will be that surgeons who normally end up retiring, with all their experience, it's the best time for them to contribute because they have years of experience behind them. So it will actually help for surgeons to continue to operate in later stages of life where they know the most. So I think there are a lot of benefits of such things in future.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing how things develop for you. You say you're going to launch commercially in January, I think, as far as I remember you saying.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, so it'd
Yes.
be really interesting to follow your progress. And because there are very few competitors, I can't see how you would have any problems, with growth and all that. It'd be really, really interesting to see. But what do you think the future holds as a generally in the health sector? I mean, in India, let's say, for example, I know you have experience in North America as well, so you could speak about that. But in India, one of the things about India I found interesting is that there's some element of health tourism, as they call it in the West, where people go to have pay for certain treatments and all that. I don't know much about it, but this kind of
Right.
surgical system, if somebody wants operations and they're in the West somewhere, maybe they're on a waiting list and they have to wait months for their surgery, they might want to just go to India and pay for some sort of surgery to be done using this kind of system. I'm not really sure how that plays into what you're doing, because you seem to have a partnership with established hospitals, which it seems to me a different kind of market. I don't know, but how do you see the future unfolding, not just for you, but the health service as a whole? Is there more automation coming in, as perhaps inspired by this kind of a system, or is there a different kind of approach? I mean, I've heard some surgeons, at least one or two surgeons, question the added value or benefit of robots. They just don't see I mean, they may have just been provoking, sort of making me think about the other side of the equation, as it were. But I don't know
Right.
what they meant really. I can't see how this could do anything other than help a surgeon. I can't see it hindering, certainly, and I don't see what the advantage of having a surgeon with two arms. On a point of interest, you've got four arms here, so one surgeon with two human arms doesn't have to be limited to his two human arms. He could have four to however many arms he wants
Right.
to do the surgery.
Yes.
So, no, it's a very
Yes.
interesting system. But yeah, tell us about what you think the changes will are unfolding in the health sector in general, perhaps in the surgical segment
Sure.
over the next few years.
Yeah. I think great points. Actually, let me take up the what is, I guess, commonly called medical tourism. I think that's what you were referring to, the health tourism. So India is probably one of the only or one of the few countries that offers the medical care at very high standard, at one of the lowest cost or the lowest cost for the types of things that are provided here in the country. And so robotic system in India at a cost effective price and per procedure cost will only help actually the medical tourism, because people have become aware. Because I think if you look at the Da Vinci history, since they're getting to the market, they have done over now 7 million procedures. And there's a tremendous acceptance across in patients, in hospitals, and medical communities, and so on. And so it is an accepted technique, except that because of the affordability factor and the cost, it has not penetrated good parts of the world. And so people, looking for less invasive options, they will travel. And I'll give you one example. So in India, first of all, when I was operating earlier on, we would do the entire heart operation with the robotics, equivalent to a cost of somewhere around, I would say, probably, depending on what procedure we were doing, about somewhere between 6 to 10,000 US dollar equivalent or less even. And compared to when I was in Chicago at the University of Chicago, I operated on an Indian patient who did not have insurance, needed one bypass or two bypasses, I can remember now. And I asked the hospital people to give me a quote. The family was wealthy, children were in US, and they were willing to spend any amount of money to have the surgery done robotically, because an elderly patient with diabetes. And so they did not want, and they were aware that we were doing. So I used to get patients from literally around the country when I was operating there. In fact, I operated on a patient from Liverpool one time. Guy came from UK. But anyway, so the hospital gave a quote of $240,000. I was so angry. And finally, I negotiated. I just told them I'm just going to fly to India and operate. And then they finally came down to $140,000. Okay. And these patients paid that money. I was really upset. And 2 days later, the patient went home. And then their finance department tells Dr. Srivastava, we're going to look into it, see if we can refund some money. Till now, they haven't done it. So the thing is that in even European countries, it's very expensive. So there are a lot of patients that are candidates for robotic surgery, except they cannot afford it outside. And so they come to India. And India has got whatever system and very talented surgeon. And I think what we are introducing that will make it very affordable, the cost will be somewhere around per procedure around $800 or so, and all inclusive in the sense of instruments and supplies and so on. And of course, the hospital will charge whatever they charge. It will be still cheaper than anything else outside. So I think, when you look at in terms of the medical tourism, it will definitely help. What I truly hope that we can get our robotic system to many of these countries, developing economies, developing countries, because they're all looking for, better care locally. To travel thousands of miles and have a major operation and then recover there and go back. What if there are complications? So our goal really is that to make this system affordable, whereby all of these countries can actually have a system. So although it will be great for India in the meantime, but at some point it should be available locally, because ultimately this is what's going to raise the standards and increase in the volumes and change the direction of surgery for many, many more patients. So somewhere it has to change. And I think the cost effectiveness, I think there's a lot of development going on in many countries now. If you take Africa, there's been kind of forgotten continent. Many countries are coming up very rapidly, and the hunger for, trying to do the medicine in the best possible way. And we'll do our best to really make it happen in, many countries. So, because ultimately, although I'm from India, and will do great in the country, but ultimately the vision is beyond the geography boundaries, literally. It's a bigger vision at a global level, and however we can help, we must. So I think that is one thing. And what was your second point? I think you had asked for something else also.
No, I think that
Other-
covers it. Yeah. Well, I was just talking about the overall health automation trend towards automation, but I may have asked different things. I tend to use composite questions, if you like, so I wouldn't worry about it. Your answer was very good. I appreciate that. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time and insights today about this
yes.
mantra system, SS Innovations. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, and you're very welcome. And great to talk to you. Also, looks like you are well informed about the subject. So it's nice to be able to speak to somebody who has done the research and is very knowledgeable. So make the conversation easy.
Thank you very
You're
much.
based out of London, Abdul.
Yeah,
You're
you're
based out
very
of
kind.
London.
Yeah, I'm in the UK. I was in London when I
Yeah.
started this website, but I've moved up north to near Manchester because it's cheaper
Okay.
to buy property here. So
Uh-huh.
I've got a little apartment here, but London was too expensive. But yeah, I'm
I
up here.
see. Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one of these days I'll be out in UK when travels become more relaxed, and maybe we'll run into each other and you know get a meal together.
I'd absolutely love that. Thank you for the idea. Okay. Is there anything that I didn't ask about that you'd like to mention that
I
perhaps?
think you have covered pretty much everything. I think between your questions and my long answers, I think we have covered most. Only other thing that I would like to add, that ultimately it will really benefit at the social, the economic, and the healthcare level. And these are sometimes, things that are kind of not looked at. Most people get focused as to the cost and what patients are paying in the hospital. But when you look at the benefits in terms of beyond the hospital, one is for the hospital, fast discharges means same bed can be used for more patients. So greater throughput as far as the utilization is concerned for the hospitals. So it helps them with their revenues. It increases their bottom line because less supplies are used. And if it is a package deal, the patients are not having complications where you end up doing a lot of things or giving blood and dealing with long ICU stays and things like that. So ultimately, it will help the hospital from two fronts. One is throughput, and secondly, less cost to the hospital also. And that will translate again ultimately to the patient in terms of the cost. Also, when you talk about patients going to get out early and recover much, much faster, like we took 10 days. The first patient I did robotic bypass surgery went home in 23 hours. A week later, he drove from West Texas to Phoenix, Arizona himself, 800 miles. And that was, I tell you, very inspiring. So these patients can go back to work. Okay, so they're not missing work. The employer gets the employee back. Nobody can replace the experience of a person. Families don't have to rearrange, children taking time off or traveling or being there for a month or two or looking for who will take care, so on. And then ultimately, the complications are much less. The blood utilization gets reduced very significantly and less readmissions for these patients. And so ultimately, it will translate into the entire healthcare system where the costs will keep going down for the system. And of course, if you think about it, why do they go to a doctor? They are sick, they want to get better, only so that they can go back to their previous lifestyle. And so the whole quality of life, there is no measurable dollar that you can put on. And so that is, so the technologies will help with all of this thing. And I think, since the biggest impediment was cost, we are addressing that. And it's like any other technology that we have seen. When the cell phones came first, I remember back in the early 80s, I paid like $2,600 and every call was horribly expensive. And now, literally the phones are given free for a contract. So I think same thing will happen with the robotic world, and more companies will enter the field, more specialty specific. So ultimately, in the end, the consumer, the patient, the community will be beneficiary. And also look in terms of the talent and hunger of the professionals. They want to advance. They don't want to keep doing the same thing that they learned 20 years ago. So it helps at every level, actually, of society in terms of advancing the science. There'll be many, I've got great ideas. Hopefully, you'll see that in the next 4 to 5 years, all kinds of things coming out of SSI that we want to pursue. And so I think, changing the science itself, literally advance the medical sciences. So, we don't want to become a sales company. We want to truly remain a medical device company, a medical science company. Business aspect is there. Yes, it will automatically come. But ultimately, having been a physician and having seen the benefits of robotic surgery and kind of having a vision about the future, how it should evolve. And we'll do everything at our level, at the company level. And, I tell you, so many people are interested in what we are doing. They keep asking us in Europe and US, when are you coming there? So we'll get there. But I think, these are, a lot of these socio-economic and the healthcare benefits that you cannot put a price tag on.
I absolutely agree. Okay, Dr. Sudhir Srivastava, thank you very much for your time and insights, and hopefully we'll talk again
Thank you.
soon.
Goodbye until then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Send us an email at sales@roboticsandautomationnews.com to register for one of our many upcoming webinars. And if you'd like us to host your webinar, we have a range of options, including long-term lead generation packages and marketing campaigns. We look forward to hearing from you soon.